Ladies, I am so thrilled to be talking to you today about your new film. And Claire, I had no idea you were such an incredible writer because you not only star in this, but you wrote it.
I did. Thanks very much.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide I've got to write this movie and I have to write it about this subject? Because it is a pretty specific subject.
It is very specific, but it's one of those great stories where there's a load of things dotted around me at the same time, in my subconscious. And then boom, the idea is very simple. So at the time I was living in New York, I just finished a run of doing Julius Caesar with Harriet here on the call, and in with Phyllida Lloyd, etc. in New York. I was auditioning in pilot season, reading lots of scripts, and then a dear friend of mine called me and said that she has to move house. She has 3 kids. She's a single mother, an amazing person, but there was nowhere to move to. So she had to move to some sort of temporary accommodation, which meant in Ireland that you had to go and fill in a form and declare that you were technically homeless. And she just found that process really horrible. I was really angry on her behalf. So I started fantasizing that she could build her own house, that she could just bypass the system, skip the queue, stop waiting for it. And then I Googled. So I Googled self-build Ireland cheap and found that a guy called Dominic Stevens had built a house and designed it for himself. And it was only €25,000, including the plumbing and the electricity, by the way. So so then I could see that it could be done for very cheap. And that sort of just set something off in my head. And it was like a flash to me. It was just a woman builds a house for herself. And because she decides to help herself, the right kind of help arrives, a new community, a new tribe, a new life. And I knew that she'd have to come from something quite urgent and like for her to go on this massive quest for herself. And because I've been working with Harriet here and Phyllida in this kind of female Shakespeare world where we were doing prisoner workshops, we worked with a lot of women that had been in situations like Sandra, where they were previously abused either in childhood or were in difficult relationships or coercive relationships. And I suppose that was just brewing there somewhere in the background as well.
I don't feel like I see movies like this very often. I don't quite know what it is, but I feel like I don't get to see films like this.
I think that the subject, is often treated in a very, it's a potentially such a dark subject.
Mm.
So I think what's distinctive about this is that it has this kind of vein of hope about it, and it's almost sending a message out there saying, there might be life beyond a terrible situation like this for any women who are in it.
I want to piggyback off of what you just said there, because this story is incredibly empowering for women. It's also very inspiring, but you have incredible women characters both in front of the camera and behind. Female director, you've got 2 amazing female leads in this film. Why is it important for women to tell these stories that oftentimes aren't very pretty, but still at the same time can be very empowering and very meaningful to a lot of people?
Well, I just think there are so many women's stories that haven't been heard and haven't had a spotlight shone on them. And inevitably, I'm often asked, are you looking at it differently because you're a woman? And you kind of go, well, I don't really know because I've never been a man, so I don't know how it would be. But I think that
valid point.
There's certainly a different kind of look, a different gaze that comes from a woman's look at it. And yeah, we had an amazing gang of us, but we also had amazing guys too who wanted this story to be told. So it was a really good kind of ensemble in that way.
I think the very fact that a woman makes it, thinks up the story, creates it, believes it, and then other women join in because of her belief, that in itself is a statement of some kind that about women doing things for themselves and not waiting around for some guy to do it. I know that sounds very obvious, but I think there is something spiritually different about that in sort of bleeds through the whole thing.
She was kind of writing because she just needed this story to be told. She'd had a friend who had become homeless, and she was just outraged that there was no rental accommodation in her home city of Dublin for this woman and her children. And she was like, I'm just going to kind of write I'm going to imagine her into a better future. And she wasn't thinking of even playing Sandra at the beginning. She was going to just play like she'd written herself a small little role. And then I heard somebody say, Claire's written a role for a great, almost like a great Hollywood movie actress. And I was like, sod this, herself, not some other actress. She's going to play this, and I'm going to direct it, and I'm going to actually insist that she plays it. So it was, it's been very much about girl power.